pretty prodigiously in September, but it feels like kind of a departure. So we appreciate you just braving water and remembering that you're not witches and you're not going to like go poof just because of some rain. And let's see, yeah, and there's food over here, food, drinks, help yourselves. I'm Thomas Andrews. I'm the faculty director of the Center of the American West, and I'm also a professor in the history department. And I'm really excited to present Professor Nicholas Villanueva Jr. today. And so I'm just going to give a little short introduction. Professor Villanueva served for 8 years in the U.S. Army and received the National Defense Service Medal. A first-generation college graduate, he earned his BA in history from the Missouri University of Science and Technology. He earned his MA and his PhD at Vanderbilt University, and all those degrees were in history. In addition to publishing numerous articles, Nick is the author of 2017's Lynching of Mexicans in Texas Borderlands from Texas A&M Press. New Mexico Press, University of New Mexico Press. Sorry about that. As well as 2024's Rainbow Cattle Company, Liberation, Inclusion, and the History of Gay Rodeo, which is published by the University of Nebraska Press. And copies are for sale over here. You can also pick up a flyer with a coupon code on it for 40% off. So definitely consider picking that up. He's also co-edited is a very, it's like one of those words that challenges our diction, right? He has co-edited a couple of volumes in critical sports studies. Nick has earned a raft of fellowships and awards. In addition to serving in the Department of Ethnic Studies, he also teaches courses in critical sports studies and Chicanx Latinx studies. And he also serves as the faculty rep for the NCAA.
Athletic department.
The athletic department.
Colorado representative for the Big 12 and NCAA.
So he gets to sort of fly around to various games, meets.
Not glamorous.
Yeah, he was saying the university does not pull out the money truck for his trips, so that it's like he kind of goes in and then has to like leave right away.
Yes, my last trip was on a bus ride.
Yeah.
And we ate on the bus, so it's not the glamour, it's over the end of this class, a couple of nights.
Yeah. So he's putting in the time. So anyway, we're really delighted to welcome Nick, and he's going to be talking on his ongoing work on gay rodeo.
Yes.
So yeah. So Professor.
Thank you for that introduction. I do want to thank Thomas Andrews for the invitation. When he invited me, I thought this is an honor. I love coming to these talks, and the environment is it's just a friendly environment. Everyone here is close up here in this room. The Tamara that you found. Right there. This is amazing. So hopefully everyone has a good view of the slides. The font's large enough. I thought this room was quite neat when I saw this room. I thought this would be perfect for what I have visually here to show. Before I get started, again, I want to thank everyone for the invitation to be here, and you all for coming out on a day like today. This research, a lot of this was funded by this university. Centers on campus like the Center for the Humanity and the Arts, and I always like to give a shout out to my mentor, Dr. Jennifer Ho, who just happens to be here. I didn't know she was going to be here today. So we'll have a post-talk conference, I'm sure. No. And my department chair, Arturo Adama, oversaw many years of this work. Several deans on campus from our previous deans of Arts and Science and Social Science Division, Jim White, David Brown, currently Sarah Jackson, Villanueva. I feel like I have everything I need here, but there are external sources that they're not here today, but those of you that, maybe there's some graduate students in the room, it's important to, I really think, understand that there are people that support your work. And my work has always been in social justice. So when I went to graduate school, I studied the history of social justice movements, various periods of 20th century. So that's how I got into the topic of anti-lynching in graduate school. So when someone sees all of my books on sports and then they see lynching, they're like, what goes on here? Social justice movements, and I've been really interested in social justice in the world of sports and critical sports studies. So this work combines with a lot that I'll talk about today of interest I had in rodeo, LGBTQ plus community members in the rodeo, social justice, and history. So the book itself is mostly about history. The interviews I have that I'll talk about today are from people who participated in the history of this organization and these rodeos. So it is largely historical. The next book I'm working on is more of my experience in the Rodeo Association, in IGRA, the International Gay Rodeo Association, as a competitor, and it's an autoethnography. And that's really challenging because the person I'm interviewing can't lie to me, can't embellish, and can't hold things back. And it is raw, let me tell you, because there's a lot of things that happen in sports, anything from pain and injury, addiction to pain meds, and I'm very forward about all of this in an autoethnography if it's going to be successful and really do what it's supposed to do. So I'm excited about that, but also really nervous, and it's a great project. So Rainbow Cattle Company, Liberation, Inclusion, and the History of Gay Rodeo is the title of the book. But before we begin, I want to explain why I say gay rodeo. Because I have to put this in the, I started with footnotes in my early publications, and sometimes people miss those. Why are you not saying LGBTQ plus or anything like this? And it's because this organization is celebrating 50 years next month in October, and where it all started in Reno, Nevada. And many of these individuals that have been with this organization and doing this for 50 years don't change with what we do in society or in academia with making sure we're fully inclusive of all queer identity, for example. And when I first started interviewing and I did not say gay rodeo, I was corrected. And I was told you're not going to get an interview until you actually ask me about gay rodeo. And so in the beginning of just about everything I publish and talks like this, I want to make sure that this is not to deny any queer identity when I use the words gay rodeo. Now you will hear me in this talk and read in the book LGBTQ+, and that is when I'm talking about a group of people. No one is easily identifiable, or these are my words. So it's challenging to try and keep everyone happy. But, and then lastly, I'll get to this in a moment, the safety of animals. A lot of people have criticism of rodeo, and I'll get to what the International Gay Rodeo Association has done to address that. But first, how did I get interested? Well, I grew up in Indiana. I grew up not too far, someone from Indiana. So.
We spent the summer in Indiana.
Oh, okay. Hopefully nowhere near. I lived in Westville, Indiana, where depending on the way the wind blew, if it was the pig farm that was blowing this way or the cows, hopefully it's coming from the direction of the corn. And that's where I grew up, and my friends all had summer jobs as I did on ranches and on farms. It was just the lifestyle I had. Friends that were involved in 4-H. I was about a 25-minute ride to school, so what I had was that rural life, and I had friends with horses. So I got into riding horses, not really rodeo at that time. And then as an adult, when my mother couldn't tell me no, I learned how to bull ride and things like that. And one night I was working at a bar in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I was bartending, and I saw this sign that went up that said, International Gay Rodeo Association. Now I identify as a gay man, and I identify with rural culture. And I thought, this is where I might meet someone like me. I don't go to the nightclubs and listen to that pumping music. I want to two-step. Maybe with another guy, so it's like, where is this going to happen? And I learned about the International Gay Rodeo Association I was pretty much a wallflower, and then I started graduate school, so I wasn't able to travel to these different rodeos. And after that, now it's been part of my life. I'm proud to say that the association has honored me with the Trustees Award 2 years ago when I let them read the manuscript before I sent it for peer review out externally. I wanted to see what the trustee members of the Rodeo Association had to say. And I was honored at their annual convention in November that year, 2023, with the Trustees Award. And they actually awarded it to myself and one to my husband for understanding that I had to travel a lot to rodeos, had to get injured and participate. There are injuries. I don't go into those. This is not my story. It's the story of the association. But the animals and well-being of what we in IGRA, I say we because I'm a member now, the four-legged athletes and the two-legged athletes. You will not see roping and tying down of animals at these rodeos. We do what's called breakaway roping. And for someone who grew up with that culture of rodeo, it takes a lot for people to transform or see their rodeo transform and go with that. But it has happened in IGRA, and I think it's amazing that you'll have breakaway roping where once you rope the animal and there's tension in the rope, your hands go up, the timer stops. There's no jumping off a horse or running out into the arena and wrestling the animal down, tying it up. Not that I'm disparaging other rodeo participants, I'm just saying this is our rodeo. And it's part of this inclusion that I mentioned in the title, our liberation. The Gay Rodeo Association, this is part of my argument and thesis, is that it is liberating from traditional rodeo, from heteronormativity in sport, and creating something that is all of their own. Now, part of my argument that I want you to think about today is this really liberating, or is there conforming to heteronormative ideals of quote-unquote manhood with, you'll hear a lot about masculinity. I try to do my best to bring everyone in of all gender and gender identity and gender nonconforming. But unfortunately, a lot of the material in the archives had to do primarily focused on men. I interviewed women about that, and interesting enough, in gay rodeo circles, they just did not see this as an issue. They said that it was a majority male sport, and they understood why advertisements in the programs were geared towards gay male establishments and such like that. Contestant input. The convention I mentioned in November, after the season from February to October, the convention has trustees and delegates from various regional organizations within International Gay Rodeo Association, so the Colorado Association, New Mexico, Arizona, all these various organizations send their members a delegation to talk about the previous season. Were there injuries to animals that could have been prevented? It's not just about animal safety, there's other rules and payments and things like that, but they spend a lot of time with being certain that the animals are safe. And lastly, stock contractors have to follow strict guidelines and rules. And if I'm at a rodeo and I see an animal that looks sick or should not be in competition, I can report it to the event manager, the arena manager, and to the rodeo. And that stock contractor has to do, this can also be something financial to them. It's in their contracts that these animals will be healthy, treated well, and contestants have to follow rules not to do something to animals to maybe agitate them, to appear as though this is going to get them out of the chute quicker or something like that. All right. Got all of that out of the way. Important information though. So research questions that I think about when I'm doing this and as I'm going forward, is gay rodeo liberation from heteronormativity in sport? Well, my first reaction is yes. I mean, there's a royalty competition that involves drag queens, and it's celebrated in this organization. You have the judges, the competitors, the volunteers, and the royalty. And they're all working together with a common cause. Does inclusion as an LGBTQ plus athlete in rodeo provide belonging in sport? Or is it a paradox of this identity? Is there a contradiction? if they're trying to conform to masculine capital ideals, and I'll get into that in another slide. And then why is the history of IGRA a largely unknown subculture even within the legacy of LGBTQ plus pride? I found out one of the reasons why I think that might be true is that what we think we know is the reality might not be actually true. And I published something in a New York column about a film being made, a documentary being made at a rodeo. And then you read those little notes below and online, and I was just trashed. What they said about who I probably vote for, the lifestyle I live, that I might be racist, xenophobic. I don't even know who I am. Google me. Find me somewhere. So I think within the larger LGBTQ plus community, there are some questions about motivation and the group membership. Most of I'd say over half of my rodeo peers in this association are definitely Christian, conservative, rural American ideals, and that's not going to change. Also includes their voting patterns and their party affiliations. So we just maintain a distance on social media during political seasons. So that's why I like this quote, this sociological quote here that says, it can be said that the first wisdom of sociology is this: things are not what they seem. And that is true about gay rodeo. Is it inclusive? Is it conforming to heteronormativity, actually? We will discuss this now. So why is this important? Ooh, actually, I think I meant to mention something here. Yes. This quotation here, this is new. I added this just recently from a book I'm reading, Center for the Humanity and the Arts has a book club. And I'm reading this book by Sarah Schulman, and this line, I can't remember what page it's from, it's in the footnotes. The opposite of oppression is not only freedom, but also belonging. And that just stood out to me because of the belonging. Who are these rodeo competitors trying to be, where are they trying to belong? In mainstream rodeo or within the LGBTQ plus community? So there's a tension that I love when examining this topic, because anyone can agree or disagree with me, and there are so many opportunities to do further research. But why is this important? Well, important of queering the West, the American West. And I could go on and on with a list of different topics within this. It could be its own presentation. But I like to say that the Gay Rodeo Association queers the West, creating this cowboy drag. And cowboy drag is a term that I use in the book. I believe I might have coined it, but I don't want to claim that. It could be something I just heard somewhere and decided to use that, but I couldn't find it anywhere to actually quote someone using it. But cowboy drag, in my definition, is the mainstream cowboy. Look at their belt buckles. They'd be shamed at the small Colorado belt buckle I'm wearing today. It has to be like ginormous, and oh, there should be turquoise in there, and garnets, and various gemstones. The shirts, oh my gosh, this isn't starched and standing up on a table like they should. The boots, don't get me started on that, although I did not wear the boots I wanted to wear because they were red velvet and I was not wearing them out there. Or red suede, sorry. I wasn't wearing them out there. But the boots, the trinkets, accessories they wear as anklets on their boots, and then the chaps. The chaps with the fringe and the colorful leather chaps. That's cowboy drag. Because who are they performing for? They're trying to attract the opposite sex in this mainstream rodeo. They are performing for other men. Yeah, the attention of other men to try and one-up that person. And so when I write that in the book, I just, sometimes I giggle when I write. I'm like, boy, did I just say that? Did I just say that? Hopefully I'll make you laugh later when I get into my primary sources. Community resilience, philanthropy, and political activism. This really gay rodeo originated, and I might be getting ahead of myself because there's a slide on this, but originated as a philanthropic group by a man named Phil Ragsdale in Reno, Nevada. He had this idea in 1975, put on a rodeo that would raise money for local charities, a local retirement home for a Thanksgiving dinner, MS charity. And what he wanted was for the rodeo, the Reno rodeo, quote unquote, straight community is where he put in his letters, to include the LGBTQ plus community as equals. So this belonging, this wasn't liberation, this was going to be part of society, the local Reno society. So there's that tension there. But this eventually evolved into a huge philanthropic organization when our federal government and social pressures against LGBTQ plus communities and localities because of the AIDS crisis. The 80s and 90s, the stigma of being HIV positive or having AIDS complications was stigmatizing. So they turned inward. And those rodeo royalty members I talked about, the drag queens, the drag kings, their shows raised money to provide homes or apartments, places to live, care, when family members, friends, jobs, everyone turned their backs, well, not everyone, but many people turned their backs on the LGBTQ plus community, and then primarily gay men specifically. And IGRA turned it inward and became this inclusive group of helping their own. The historiography, I'll just briefly go over this. I already spoke, or maybe I need to speak. Jim Downs' Stand By Me, The Forgotten History of Gay Liberation, inspired me. My work has to do with inspiration from Downs in thinking of gay liberation as not an urban center, as not part of sexual freedom and sexual liberation of the 1970s. It was about creating your own civic group, your own church group, a group that you could call your own. And this happened in the sport of rodeo. So I had already started doing the work, but then I drew inspiration from Downs. This documentary here, that is Wade Earp, a good friend of mine now. This is a great documentary to watch. And he is a descendant of Wyatt Earp. And the first page of the book, I take a quotation from him, and he was the first person I interviewed. And after I interviewed him, I said, whatever happens with this, if it's a journal article or a book, this is the way I'm starting the book. And I did. And he said, when I was a little boy, I told my father when I grew up I wanted to be a fireman, a cowboy, and a Dallas Cowgirl cheerleader. How better to start a book about identity than that? So I didn't know where I was going with this, but I wrote that down, and it was just, he's an excellent person to interview. A world champion in the association. Rebecca Schofield, Outriders, Rodeo at the Fringes of American West, and Lisa Ford, Rodeo as Refuge, Rodeo as Rebellion. Both had a chapter in their books on gay rodeo. Together, they published in 2024 Slapping Leather, this book that came out just before mine. We all collaborate. I'm actually pretty good friends with Becca, and we went to rodeos together. She invited me up to the University of Idaho, where she's the department chair in history, and I gave a talk there. So there's just this community. We're not competing against each other because there's so much you can examine about this association. I've only scratched the surface. Some of the interviews for the research. I have Jackie Kemp in the upper center here, a good friend of mine. John Beck has been competing since the early 80s and just qualified for World Finals of the 13 events, at least in one, for a continuous, yes, it's 38 years he's been competing, and he's going to be turning 74 soon. Jack Morgan ended up going on vacation with him to Mexico with my friends and family. I mean, this becomes a family. Doreen and Candy, a former president of IGRA, royalty member, Michael Vrooman, all these people provided their interviews and their stories and gave me all this, what they call junk. To a historian, these are treasures. So feel free to come up. I have several copies later. You can come up and you can open them and flip through the programs. Anything that I have that I don't want to be touched are like these originals right here that I have that I will just show later. Archival sources, three of these are all digitized, so we're doing research in it. This one is, I think, one of the most amazing. Gay Rodeo, IGRA.com, hosted by Frank Harrell, the historian for IGRA. He has scanned over 300 rodeo programs. These primary sources, you can sit and click like I did during 2020 when I couldn't go anywhere. So I read through every one of these programs, and useful tool. And Rebecca Schofield in Idaho did interviews and has transcribed them, and has the audio on her archive, Voices of Gay Rodeo. Here are the interesting sources. As a historian, where are you going to find the stories from the 1970s and 1980s about gay rodeo that are not local newspapers tongue-in-cheek joking about, oh look, a gay rodeo? No, writers for these gay pornographic magazines actually traveled to these rodeos, traveled from LA to Vegas. There's a story that I include in the book about that journey, which was really funny, but going through the airport and flying the flight, flirting with a flight attendant who actually said, sorry, this was a short flight. I wish I could have shown you how friendly the skies could be. That's in the book. You know, these are the stories that you're not going to get anywhere else other than true primary sources. But let me tell you, when you ask your research librarian to find these copies for you, it's a little questionable, and you have to do a lot of explaining. I've mentioned the archives, and yes, that is Joan Rivers in this one magazine for the rodeo. She served as Grand Marshal. So there was a crossover in a lot of popular culture at the time, in the 80s, and definitely in the 1990s with country music being quite popular. So the rodeo programs, as sources, they provided information about the sport, if you didn't know about the sport. They actually had advertisements on where to buy a hat, where to buy your boots, how you can dress the part for rodeo weekend. Sounds a little bit artificial to me as someone who watches the person put their hat down and sets it down this way. No, you don't do that. That's where you know someone doesn't normally wear the hat. And so that's a question that comes up, is the idea of selling Western culture at through these rodeo programs. I'll get through a few of these rather briefly here. Rodeo programs also published ads by governors, members of Congress, local mayors, showing their support. Rodeo programs also included ads for local newspapers, monthly or weekly papers for the LGBTQ plus community, like this one here, the Denver Voice, or the Dallas Voice. And this was important because many people came to the rodeo from places that didn't have this type of print material, didn't know how to meet others like them. You had then travel agents letting you know, contact me, I'll tell you where the quote-unquote gay-friendly places are to travel. Puerto Vallarta, Mexico was one that they advertised a lot. Different places in cities where they said this is more of an LGBTQ plus friendly neighborhood with bars and restaurants and shops and galleries. But most of them were always mostly geared towards men and were sexually provocative. I mean, don't tell me someone's going to do a transcontinental flight wearing jeans that tight and that tight vest. So these, sometimes they were a distraction. You didn't even realize, this is an ad for a realtor. But I didn't know based on the images provided. But they also provided public service announcements, important messages to be made. The San Diego AIDS Project had this ad in one of the programs but really with other messages, not just about safe sex, for example, but remember that drugs and alcohol use can impair your judgments in sexual situations. So taking it another step further to really discuss what might happen at an event like a rodeo if there's alcohol involved. And trust me, there's a lot of alcohol involved in these rodeos and these evening dances and events and the royalty shows. They always posted what, in every program they post the events and the description of the events. This one here, these are still all current events, but there are some events that, for safety of animal, for example, have been eliminated from, over the years, from IGRA. And lastly, you have the corporate sponsors who, of course, want to make sure that their voice is heard, that they support the community. This didn't happen with the early programs, with the exception of Budweiser. Budweiser, an executive from Budweiser at the first rodeo sponsored the beer at the 1976 rodeo arena and, quote, said, "I don't care who drinks my beer." So over time, you have all these other corporate sponsors putting their ads in full-page ads. So the history of gay rodeo, as I said, began as this philanthropic idea to raise money, but also to have a sense, to create a sense of belonging for the community, to be with the mainstream Reno community. And it did develop over time in that way, but also they wanted to break down LGBTQ stereotypes. And when I say stereotypes, not just stereotypes about men, but also about women at a time when, you know, the 70s and 80s, you have changes in sports, primarily with Title IX and in public schools, high school and universities, this increase in women participation in sports. And that's what rodeo and gay rodeo did. The women competing were proving that not only in pole bending are they great, but they enjoyed when their times were better than the men. So this was a sport that really involved everyone competing together, kind of personally, sometimes against each other. But what it developed into was gay pride of the American West. And I have this was back in 1982 from a program I have up here, where Ragsdale, the founder, said that the theme for the 82 National Reno Gay Rodeo is Western Gay Pride. And we encourage you to join us in projecting this theme. So there's this promotion of gay pride in places where there had never been a gay pride parade. Gay rodeo introduced that to some of these locations. Billings, Montana, for example, hosted one gay rodeo, but hadn't hosted a gay pride celebration. Little Rock, the same. No official gay pride parade, but there was a parade for the rodeo prior to the events beginning. Colorado Springs, a largely Christian conservative, having a Christian conservative network, had for about 7 years an official IGRA rodeo. Denver's in a small town, but it attracts people from small towns that come to Denver and get to learn about various different aspects of the LGBTQ plus community and environment. So is this inclusive? Yes, I would say this is something that has allowed for more inclusion of the community and also to be liberating by creating these parades and celebrations in places that they had not existed. The category of events, this is where there's a debate personally when I examine, is this conforming or is this liberating? So you have the rough stock events, the roping events, and speed events are kind of, they're combined and I'll basically say if you want to compete for all-around cowboy, you have to, or all-around cowboy, you have to compete in at least one rough stock, one of these two events, and one camp event. The fun thing about the camp event is that it was criticized. These events were criticized by some old-timers, males in the early 80s. They reached out to Phil Ragsdale and said, we don't want women at our rodeo, competing at our rodeo. We don't want these drag queens performing at our rodeo. We don't want those campy events. So what did Phil Ragsdale do? Required if you're going to go for all-around cowboy or cowgirl, you have to compete in one of each of these. So you have to compete in the camp event. That was his way of basically saying, no, this is going to be inclusive of everyone. And with that said, the Colorado Association, I found this is one of their original documents in 1982 as they formed as an official IG, well, it wasn't IGRE yet, these are still separate organizations. Colorado Gay Rodeo Association, let's see, I didn't mark this because it's an original, so I didn't want to mark it up. There we go. To be an organization for the entire community, barring all prejudices related to sex, national origin, sexual preference, religion, race, and I love this part, or any other prejudices that which the organizations might encounter. So very all-inclusive in 1982 in their founding bylaws. The team events, well, this does break from the rules of heteronormativity. You have, you can compete, men and women can compete together in team events. There's no event that is exclusive just for men or for women, and the rules are the same in all events. And this is Candy Pratt, still competing and has won numerous International Gay Rodeo Association all-around titles, is now becoming a judge, which is probably what I think I'm going to go into as well. Injuries start to build up after a while. But men and women have served as IGR presidents in the past as well. Speed events, that's my friend Lori Casados. Speed events, barrel racing, pole bending, and flag racing, similar to what you have in rodeos around the country. But the rough stock event, this one, I wanted to start doing bull riding, and I asked John Beck, who had been doing this for 30 plus years, how do you know you're ready to ride a bull? And of course I'm taking all these notes because I'm also writing the book. And he said, well, take a bag of marbles and remove one each time you cover a steer. Once you've lost all your marbles, you're ready to ride a bull. And he was making a joke, and of course I'm diligently writing on this. Okay, I really need to know. These are timed events. 2 are subjective, steer riding and bull riding. There's a score for the bull and a score for the rider. And men and women both compete in these events. Calf roping on foot, mounted breakaway roping, and team roping. And here's the camp events, and this is where I say yes, gay rodeo is liberating. That is Ryan Villanueva, my husband. I'm about to take that name back from him wearing that dress. But in this event, wild drag race, one person has to dress in drag. They go to the local thrift store and find something, whatever, and put that on. They usually have a costume theme. Obviously, this is Mario Kart. It was their theme. And then a man and a woman. So you have everyone competing in this together. And you can have injuries. There have been serious injuries. And I make sure that I point this out because as much as it's fun and games, as this quote about camp that I have from Susan Sontag, one can be serious about the frivolous and frivolous about the serious. It's important to understand that there have been deaths in rodeo, obviously, I'm sure you all know that, but in IGRA as well. This man wasn't doing a camp event, but he was in a chute preparing for an event. The accident happened in the chute before the event even started. And in those chutes, you have certain events where you're waiting for the animal to come out in the camp events. These are the same, this is mostly the same stock. And then the royalty. You have 4 categories: Miss IGRA, Mr. IGRA, Mr. IGRA, and Miss IGRA. And you can see how they all identify here. Transgender athletes have started to emerge since 2001, and this has been, as far as I can trace back, one of the earliest organizations that actually wrote in their bylaws that you can compete the gender you choose to identify, since 2001. president at the time, Roger Bergman, I interviewed him a few years ago, and he said he was handed that at convention and said, tomorrow you need to be able to come to the floor with new bylaws, and he didn't know what to do. So he just started talking to everyone at the convention. He came up with we've always been all-inclusive, so we're going to be all-inclusive. Oh, and there's a photo up here if you want to take a look later. This is Chili Pepper, friend of mine now, probably going to text me after this talk, who also competes in the arena as Tony Valdez. And on one occasion, the daytime events, were rather close to each other to the nighttime royalty. So as you can see here, Tony is competing in an event that looks like steer deco and has his wig on for Chili Pepper and makeup on, preparing for the evening. So this is who Chili Pepper is, and very good in competition. Still competes. But the decline of gay rodeo. Some of it has to do with the inclusion in society. I mean, do we need gay rodeo? Or can someone just attend a rodeo? Do we need a quote-unquote gay bar? LGBTQ plus establishments that are just identified for this group when society, hopefully, continues to be more progressive and inclusive. So this decline could be because there's an app for that, an app for this. You know, we're completely connected. I have this image here because these two men do not identify with the LGBTQ plus community. They compete in mainstream rodeos. They're preparing for bull riding, and I asked Matt Story, very nice guy, I said, why do you compete at the gay rodeo? And he said, I know you all are going to follow the rules. We're going to get the stock that is at our ability level. We're going to make sure that people follow the rules, and you know how to put on a good time. And so when you have members in the community, allies like this, that are coming together in gay rodeo, some members over time, as this transition started to occur, questioned, is this an invasion of gay rodeo? So it is an interesting question to examine, one that I don't get into too much at the end. I pose the questions about why is it that there's this decline in gay rodeo. It could be related to popular culture, which is something that I am working on in a separate topic for an article. The 1990s, gay rodeo was at its peak. 20 to 30,000 people attending some of these rodeos. Over hundreds of thousands of dollars raised in charities. Shania Twain became the first country music woman to win a Grammy. Garth Brooks, Leanne Rimes. You had this rise in country music. Even Madonna in 1990 had a music video that had nothing to do with Western culture. Yet she had a group of men dancing behind her shirtless with cowboy hats on. Cowboy culture was, Western culture was seen as pop culture and was accepted. You had in mainstream nightclubs a Tuesday night or a Wednesday night line dancing lessons. That eventually tapered off. Around the same time, you see this decline in gay rodeo. So, what is it popular culture, and does that have to do with, again, with this idea of liberation, inclusion, sense of belonging, sense of freedom? Those are questions that I like to raise for questions when we start the Q&A segment, or any questions that you have. So this is getting close to my argument here, but I can't give it all away if you're going to read the book. But I will say this, that athletes, judges, royalty, volunteers, and fans from marginalized groups, such as the gay rodeo, are fighting this tension between liberation and conformity to heteronormativity in sport. One brings a sense of freedom, and the other a semblance of inclusion. There is an ideological desire for harmony amongst members within marginal groups like IGRA. Unity, however, is nearly impossible because of their multifaceted identities, yet there is a fight for freedom from opposing forces that undeniably symbolize a threat. and Gay Rodeo is a space where queer identities can come together to protect the safe domain they knowingly and unknowingly created together. Gay Rodeo allows for an expression of queer identity safely, brings together complex political and cultural expressions of members. This leads to a common cause, which is a history that has been disregarded for too long and needs to be explored to further understand how marginalized groups have stood up to oppression. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you.
That's great. At the beginning, I realized I was remiss in not thanking Tamara McKee from the Center of the American West. She did a tremendous amount of work to organize all of this and make sure that we had a room and pizza and wonderful flyer and all that. So thank you, Tamara. Ryan Lewick, who contributed in all sorts of different ways. Graphic design, clearly he's doing the camera work here and all of that. So thanks, Ryan. And I also want to thank Brooke Neely from the Center of the American West as well for logistical support, all that good stuff. Yeah, and thanks again